I let my neighbor use my lawn mower during the summer. By fall, he claimed it was his. When I asked for it back, he said, "Possession's 9/10 of the law, buddy." The next time he pulled it out of his shed, he found it covered in a notice that made his face turn white. I live just outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of neighborhood where people wave, borrow sugar, let your dog roam a little too far without calling animal control. It's quiet, safe. The houses all look a little too similar, and you learn to get along with your neighbors because seeing the same face over the fence every day either makes you friends or enemies. Mike moved in 2 years ago. Seemed like a decent guy. Worked construction, drove a rusted Dodge, had a kid in middle school who only visited every other weekend. We didn't talk much at first, but we'd nod across the yard, complain about the HOA, that kind of thing. Last summer, in June, his mower gave out. He knocked on my door, looking sheepish. Said, "Hey man, you mind if I borrow yours just for today? Grass is getting out of control."
Didn't even think about it. "Sure," I said.
"Just bring it back when you're done." That one time turned into 2, then 3. Before long, it was, "Hey, you using it today?" And I'd just wave him off. I didn't care that much. I work long hours, and I only mow once a week anyway. It felt good to help someone out, to be a decent neighbor. But by mid-August, I started noticing weird stuff. Like one Saturday, I walked out with my gas can to top off the mower, and it wasn't in my shed. I walked around the fence line and spotted it sitting in Mike's backyard, grass clippings still fresh underneath it. He didn't ask. He didn't even text. I stood there staring at it for a minute, feeling something shift in my chest. I didn't say anything then. I let it slide. Told myself it wasn't a big deal. That was my mistake. A few weeks later, I knocked on his door. We were cleaning up the yard before fall hit hard. Leaves were everywhere. I figured it was a good time to grab the mower, get one last cut in before I stored it for winter. Mike opened the door, leaned against the frame. "Hey, can I grab my mower back today? Gonna trim before the rain." He tilted his head, almost smirking. "Your mower?" I blinked. "Yeah, the one I let you borrow." "Oh," he said. "Nah, that's mine now." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "What?" He shrugged. "Possession's 9/10 of the law, buddy." He said it so casually, like he'd been waiting to say it, like it was some clever thing he'd heard on TV and couldn't wait to use in real life. I felt my mouth go dry. "You serious?" "Yeah," he said. "I've been maintaining it. Changed the oil. Sharpened the blade. You barely use it. Figured it made more sense for me to keep it." I stood there stunned. I wasn't sure whether to argue, yell, or just laugh again. I said, "I let you borrow it. I never gave it to you." He folded his arms. "You never asked for it back." "I shouldn't have to," I said, my voice getting sharp. "It's mine." He shook his head like he pitied me. "You got any proof of that?" That's when I realized what was happening. He knew I didn't keep receipts for something I bought 4 years ago at Lowe's. He knew it wasn't registered or titled. He was using that to screw me over. And he thought it was smart. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. That night, I sat in my garage, staring at the empty space where the mower used to be. I kept thinking about how stupid I felt. I tried to be nice, helpful, friendly, and this guy used it against me. I didn't sleep much. Around 3 a.m., I got up and pulled out my old filing bin. I found a blurry photo from 4 summers ago. Me standing in the driveway next to the brand new mower, grinning like an idiot because I just bought my first real piece of yard equipment. Then I pulled up Ohio's property law. Turns out possession doesn't mean crap if someone can prove ownership, especially with a photo and a witness. So, I printed out a notice. Typed it clean, all caps, made sure every word was legal and serious. Notice. Owner demands return of property. This lawnmower is personal property of my name. Any use or possession without permission is unauthorized. Failure to return will result in legal action. Next morning, before dawn, I walked over. He left the shed unlocked. I knew he would. He thought he'd already won. I stapled the notice right to the mower's handle. One on the gas cap. One on the deck. Clear and bold. Couldn't miss it. Then I waited. The look on his face when he opened that shed. I'll never forget it. His hand stopped mid-reach. He stood frozen for a second, reading the paper. Then again. Then again. Like maybe if he read it enough, it would change. He didn't say a word, but I saw his throat twitch, his jaw clench. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stood in my driveway, sipping coffee, watching him stare at what he thought he'd taken from me. Still, that wasn't the end. He didn't return it. And what came next was even worse. He didn't return the mower. That whole week went by, and nothing happened. The mower stayed in his shed. I saw him outside once or twice. He looked right at me, but didn't say a word. Just kept walking like I was a stranger. I thought about going over there again, knocking, maybe trying one last time to reason with him. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I just didn't want to hear that smug voice again. Then Friday morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a plain envelope with my name scrawled across the front. Inside was a printed sheet, typed out like mine had been. But this one was full of crap about implied transfer of ownership, lack of documented objection, and something about how I'd abandoned interest in the mower by failing to reclaim it in a timely manner. It was signed M. Harlan. His name. Like he was pretending to be a lawyer or something. I laughed out loud. Then I got mad. I took the letter to my buddy Sean, who works maintenance for the county. He's not a lawyer, but he's dealt with property disputes before. He read it, shook his head, and said, "This doesn't mean anything. He's bluffing." That's when I decided I'd had enough. The next part, I'll admit, took some planning. I went back through my phone and found a few old texts from Mike, back when he first borrowed the mower. Stuff like, "Thanks again, man. I'll bring it back tomorrow," and "Appreciate you letting me use it. Mine's totally dead." I saved screenshots. Dated clear, with his number right there. Then I called a local attorney, just a free consultation, nothing big. I explained the situation, showed him the photo of the mower, the texts, and the fake legal notice. He told me I had enough to file a small claims case. Said it was open and shut if I wanted to take it to court. But here's the thing, he also gave me another idea. You know, he said, if you really want to make a point, you could file a police report. Technically, it's unauthorized use of property. Maybe even theft if you can prove ownership. I hadn't thought of that. That Monday, I walked into the local police department with a folder. The photo, the texts, the typed-up timeline. I didn't exaggerate anything. Just told the truth. The officer at the desk read everything. Asked me a few questions. Then she nodded and said, "Yeah, this is enough to open a report." She said they wouldn't go knocking on his door that day, but someone would follow up. I walked out of there feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, calm. 2 days later it happened. I was out front trimming the hedge when a cruiser pulled up next door. Not with lights or sirens, just calm. A young officer got out and knocked on Mike's door. He opened it. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Mike's face. At first he looked annoyed, like someone had interrupted him. Then he looked confused. Then pale. He kept glancing over at me while the officer talked. Not once did I look away. Finally, Mike nodded and stepped back into the house. When he came out again, he was holding the mower handle, wheeling it across the lawn. The officer followed behind him, arms crossed. He stopped at the edge of my driveway. Didn't say a word. Just left it there, turned, and walked back inside without looking at me. But that's not the end either. Because 3 days later, I came outside to find my car windshield cracked straight through. A rock sitting on the hood. I stared at the rock for a long time. It wasn't huge, but it was heavy enough to do damage. The crack ran right through the middle of the glass, like a spider web stretching outward. At first, I just stood there, arms crossed, heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't a random act either. My car was in the driveway, not near any trees or overhangs. There was no storm. No kids in the neighborhood with slingshots. And the rock? It was from my own front garden bed. Mike used to help himself to the stones I lined my driveway with when he had to hold something down in his yard. He knew exactly where they were. I took a picture of the damage. Called the non-emergency line. They came out, filed another report. The same officer as before showed up. She didn't say it outright, but her face told me she had a good guess who did it. We can't prove he threw it, she said quietly, almost apologetically.
No cameras, no witnesses.
But we'll file it. I nodded. I understood. Still, I couldn't just let it go anymore. That night, I went out and bought a cheap motion sensor camera. I mounted it under the eaves, angled straight at my driveway and the shed. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't post a sign. Just kept it quiet. A week passed. Nothing happened. No more rocks. No more vandalism. But I noticed something strange one morning. My trash can was knocked over. Not just tipped. Rolled halfway down the sidewalk with the lid popped open. Then the next day, my garden hose was stretched across the lawn like someone had yanked it full force and let it whip back. Each time, it was small. Stupid. Easy to dismiss. But I knew it was him. He wanted to mess with me without doing anything that could land him in trouble. And he was careful. Always just on the edge of what could be explained away. Until he got sloppy. One night, around 1:30 a.m., I was woken by a soft clanging sound. Not loud. Just enough to feel wrong. I stayed still listening. It happened again. Metal on metal. Then quiet. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and checked the camera feed. There he was.
Mike.
In my yard. He wasn't wearing anything to hide his face.
No hat.
Just him, walking around like he belonged there. He walked up to the shed, tried the handle locked. Then he walked around the side of the house. I didn't wait. I called the cops. When they showed up, he was gone. But I had the video. I showed it to the officer on my porch, phone screen glowing in the dark. He watched it twice. No questions this time. Just a nod. We'll take it from here, he said. The next morning, something was different. Mike's truck was gone. His curtains were drawn. And for the first time since summer, I didn't see him step outside. Not for the trash. Not for the mail. Not even when the school bus came down the road. But I knew it wasn't over. Because the day after that, I got a letter taped to my door. Not in an envelope this time. Just taped up there, shaking a little in the breeze. It was typed again.
Short. Cold.
You think you've won, but you don't know who you're messing with. I don't forget. And I don't forgive. No name.
No signature.
Just that. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a mower anymore. I stared at that paper for a long time before I took it down. Read it 3-4 times. My hand shook a little, not because I was scared. More like I was angry in a way I hadn't felt before. Not the kind of anger that makes you yell. The quiet kind. The cold kind. The kind that sits in your chest like a cinder block. That note made something clear. This wasn't about the mower anymore. This was about ego. About him not being able to stand that I didn't roll over and let him win. And now he was threatening me plain and simple. I brought the note inside, slipped it into a folder with the others, photos, the police reports, the camera footage. I didn't take it to the cops yet. I wasn't ready for that. Not because I was scared of what they'd do, but because I had my own plan forming. Next morning, I called a buddy of mine from high school, Pete. He owns a landscaping business now, deals with permits, zoning, equipment leasing, he knows the system. I told him what was going on. Left out some details but gave him the basics. He was quiet on the phone for a moment, then said, "You know, we could make his life real inconvenient without laying a finger on him." Asked how. Pete explained that in Franklin County, if someone is running any kind of side business, like lawn care, equipment rentals, or even small engine repair, without the right paperwork, all it takes is a single anonymous tip to trigger an inspection. Fines if they're unlicensed. Equipment seizure if they're working without permits. I asked him if he thought Mike was doing any of that. "I've seen that guy's Facebook posts," he said. "Bet he's been mowing lawns under the table all summer." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just let the silence hang. 3 days later, a white pickup with county plates rolled down our street. 2 men in collared shirts stepped out, clipboard in hand. They knocked on Mike's door. I watched from my kitchen window. One of the men pointed toward the backyard.
Toward the shed.
Mike came outside, shirtless, disheveled. He looked confused, then annoyed, then full-on pissed. Arms waving, jaw moving fast. He looked like he was trying to explain something, but the clipboard guy just kept nodding and writing. They were there for 10 minutes, maybe 15. Then they left.
Didn't take anything. Didn't say anything to me.
But I saw what they left behind. A bright orange sticker slapped onto a shed door. Notice of violation. Investigation pending. The same kind of sticker I'd seen on foreclosed houses when I was a kid. Mike ripped it off the next day. But I already knew. It was official now. He was on someone's radar. Still, I stayed quiet. Didn't engage.
Didn't speak to him.
But I watched. And then came the worst turn yet. Saturday morning, I woke up to my dog whimpering by the back door. I opened it to let him out, and he bolted. Something had spooked him. He ran straight to the back fence and started barking like crazy. When I got out there, I saw it. Someone had tossed a handful of meat over the fence.
Raw.
Covered in some kind of powder, pink, almost gray. I froze.
Called the vet right away. Took my dog in.
They ran tests, induced vomiting, kept him overnight for observation. Thankfully, he was okay. But they said it looked like rat poison. I didn't say a word to Mike. I didn't confront him. I just added it to the folder. Because now it wasn't about property. Or revenge. Or bruised pride. It was personal. And someone was going to pay for that. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind outside had me looking toward the window. I left the porch light on. Locked every door twice. My dog, thank God, was okay, but something in me changed after that. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was done. The next morning, I filed another police report. This time, I brought the meat in a sealed bag, the vet's statement, and a copy of the orange violation sticker from a shed. I told the officer flat out, I think my neighbor tried to poison my dog. She didn't nod, didn't react, just wrote everything down and told me animal control would be following up. But deep down, I knew nothing would happen right away. So I took a different route. A few days later, I walked into the city's building department. Asked to speak with someone about code violations. When they asked what kind, I handed them photos, taken from my second-story window, showing the way Mike had extended his shed past the fence line. The back corner of it jutted into easement space by at least 2 feet. That's not allowed, right? I asked. The woman behind the counter squinted at the photo and frowned. That's a zoning issue. You'll want to file this formally. I did. Then I made one more call. My cousin works part-time for the electric company. I asked him to check something. Just casual. 2 days later, he called back. Dude's running a line from his breaker panel to that shed.
No permit. No inspection.
That was enough. Within a week, city workers showed up with clipboards, a marked truck, and a whole lot of questions for Mike. I wasn't home when it happened, but when I got back that evening, the shed door had a second notice posted. This one read, Unsafe structure. Do not enter. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt uneasy. I wanted him to feel pressure, but this was the first time it looked like he might actually snap. The next day, I found deep scratches on the side of my garage door. Not random. Purposeful. Like someone had taken a screwdriver and carved long, hateful lines into the paint. It wasn't vandalism anymore. It was a warning. I called the cops again. They made another note. Another report. But still, no arrest. No direct proof. That night, I decided to dig deeper. I went online and looked him up, court records, old news clippings, anything I could find. And there it was. 6 years ago, in a different county, he was sued by a former landlord, accused of trashing a rental, destroying appliances, and threatening the property manager when he was evicted. No criminal charges, but a civil judgment was entered against him. He never paid. He moved 2 towns over. Started fresh. Like none of it ever happened. Now I understood. He didn't just want to keep my mower. He wanted control. He wanted to feel bigger than he was. Like he could take something from someone else and never have to answer for it. And I wasn't the first person he'd tried this on. But I'd be the last. I kept the folder, everything I printed, every photo, every report. It's in the back of my closet now, under some old winter coats. Mike doesn't bother me anymore. He barely steps outside. But every time I hear a car door slam late at night, I still check the window, just in case. And sometimes, when I mow the lawn with that same mower he tried to take from me, I think about how it started with a handshake over a fence and ended with a deadbolt on my shed and a camera over my driveway. I used to think being a good neighbor meant being easygoing. Now I know it just means knowing when to stop being quiet.